First off, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It is a really neat opportunity to get in front of the future of healthcare. As my career is winding down, I always enjoy getting in front of the future because it's going to be the future that cares for me as I get older. So that's the first important point. The second important thing is LSU is leading, and it's the top of the ninth. And as you can tell by my accent, the Southeastern Conference might be important to me, and so that's really exciting. Maybe LSU will stay in the winners bracket for the World Series. That would be really cool to happen today while I'm up on stage. The objectives today. Our first objective is to understand why events happen, because it's not if events are going to happen. It's not if things are going to happen that you wish they hadn't have happened. It's going to be when they happen, and to have a better understanding of why. It's to understand and recall two teaming skills that we're going to teach today that will make you better at what you do. It's to be able to explain just culture. And just culture is a really important concept when it comes to error prevention, because if you don't treat people well after an event, you suddenly aren't aware of the events that you're having, and you have problems that go unnoticed. And the other thing, and the last thing we're going to talk about from an objective, but the first thing on the slides is why it's important to report events. But let's talk about current state. So this group of people that I'm speaking with will work within St. Mary's, St. Louis, SLU, and Cardinal Glennon primarily. In a rolling 12 months in those hospitals, 105 patients have experienced serious harm as a result of the care that we deliver at SSM. You drive by the buildings, you walk up and down the halls, you see the great commercials, and you don't realize that behind the scenes, there's this element of sometimes we hurt patients. Now, when you look at the thousands and thousands and thousands of patients that we cared for that we didn't hurt, 105 isn't a terrible number unless you're one of the 105. Unless you're one of the practice teams that were involved in the care of the 105. And you're having to deal with your part in a patient error. And we look at how many days, hours between, because sometimes that gives us a better idea. But every 4.31 hours in those three hospitals, a patient is harmed. So while you're here this afternoon, at least one patient in those three hospitals will experience harm. Leading causes of harm are falls, pressure injuries, care management problems, and hospital-acquired infections. System causes of all of those things really revolve around power gradients, poor psychological safety, and perceived pressure to complete the task. This slide is important because it really says why we're here today. We're here today because many, many years ago, a group of 5 sisters got off a boat in St. Louis and said, let's begin to give health care. And as they began to give health care, and as they began to care for the sick and the injured and the underserved, the mission and vision and values of SSM begin to grow and take root in their practice of healthcare and in their practice of their beliefs. And as a result of that, over the many years that they've had it, the values that you see in front of you, compassion, respect, excellence, stewardship, and community, all apply to safety. And it's important as we look at this to remember, as providers of care, we're standing on the shoulders of some pretty brave and courageous women. Why do we report? Because we can't see what we can't fix. As a healthcare organization, what you never want to happen is you never want to have a major event And during the major event, 2 or 3 people speak up and say, oh, well, I knew all that. I knew about that all along. I saw this coming. I knew this was going to happen. And nobody told us. Because, y'all, if we can't see it, we can't fix it. How do we see it? We see it in our Risk Connect system. In your orientations to your separate hospitals, you're going to learn more about how to put in an event. But on our homepage, we have the Safety Event tab, and you can click on that. And most reasonably computer literate teams, which all of y'all fit into because y'all all grew up with computers and screens in your hands, can find their way through the program on how to report an event. It's really easy to find this on your homepage, and it's really important that we put in at events. Is it time consuming? Yes, it is. I wish there was an easy button to put in our events, but there's not. And here's why. When you have an event system, you can have it really easy to put in an event and have really terrible data on the back end, or you can make it a little bit more difficult to enter the information, but make it really good when you go and we want to harvest data and aggregate things. So our system is kind of in the middle of that spectrum. What do you report? Recognition, first and foremost. The event system is not just about what went wrong. If you see something that went really well or really right, give your friends a shout out in that system, because here's what happens to that. When you put in an event report, your patient safety specialist at your ministry will read it the next day or the next business day. I personally read every event that's put in my region every morning. So you have 2 people reading those events. When I see a great catch or a great story, I send that story to Dr. Frentz, to Dr. White, to Dr. Wolf, to whoever the physician that's most appropriate is in our senior leadership, and say, look what we did. Isn't this great? So don't forget, our risk system is also our bragging system. Chronic frustrations, things that make you crazy, things that just you wish just chronic things that make you crazy, great things to put in event reports. If you find yourself having to make a workaround, a process, or something within your workspace, it's a great thing to put in the Risk Connect system. Patient care concerns. If a patient complains about it, even if we're not sure if the patient is right or not, put in an event and let our team look into it. Anytime you're aware of an error that's made, patient complaints, and workplace issues, environmental, which could include lighting, it could include temperature, it can include those type things, but also then the psychological safety of the environment that you're in. If at any time you don't feel like you can practice speaking up safely, it's time to put in an event. What happens when you put one in? First and foremost, we have a just culture here at our organization. It's something that we've worked really hard at since I've been here over the last 4 years. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute. You're protected from retaliation. There's no way that if you put in an event that someone's going to get you in trouble. Now, can I guarantee that out of 40,000 people, if you put in an event, somebody's not going to come to you and say something? No, I can't guarantee that. But I can guarantee you, if we find out someone came and said something to you about putting in an event, we will stop that behavior. Because that's not okay. It's inconsistent with our values. And we manage that from time to time. It gives you the peace of mind to know you told somebody. Because SSM is really big, and sometimes the people around you, the nurses on the unit, can't even tell you who's in charge of what. When you're looking for something or you're needing something, sometimes your team can't even define that for you. So the Risk Connect event system is a great place to go. We can remove barriers. We have removed barriers, and we'll continue to remove barriers to your practice. into your life. And if you feel better since you told somebody, we can bring joy to your work, especially if we were to fix a problem. And sometimes you think you're the only person having the problem. We find this a lot with Epic. And then when we finally fix a problem, we'll have 200 people go, man, this is great. I've worked around this for years or whatever. But it was because someone finally told us that there was a problem. Let's go back to Just Culture for just a minute. Our system board and our regional boards have both approved a Just Culture statement. In that Just Culture statement, it says that we trust people to do their work to their best of their ability. And we support, in good faith, people who make mistakes. And I can't say enough of how important that is. Why is that important? Because that aligns going way back to the sisters and to our values of compassion and respect and the things that we need to do. It means that not when, but if you make an error, you're going to experience dignity, you're going to experience grace, and you're going to experience a restorative culture. If you report the error, you also might have people come around along beside you to help you figure out what the system did that created the error. The Just Culture principle is the cornerstone of our safety program. Now, I don't know how many of safety guru people that we have in the room that may have done safety quality classes on their road to get to this room. But this is a slide that I'm most proud of because I got James Reason, Sidney Dekker, and James Rasmussen all on the same slide, which are three of the biggest thought leaders in patient safety. So we reference the Swiss cheese model. Most everyone has heard of the Swiss cheese model and how errors get through the holes in the Swiss cheese and they become events because we have holes in our cheese. Sidney Dekker writes that you're safer to fly on an airline that just had a fatal crash yesterday than you are flying on an airline that hadn't had a crash in 15 years. Why is that so? Because the longer we go without an event, the further we move that dot in the middle in response to pressures for make more money, do more work, make more money. You continue to move. Does this have a pointer? No. You continue to move that dot closer and closer to the safety boundary. And suddenly you cross the safety boundary and you have an event and the system resets itself. The reason that we have events in healthcare or events in nuclear energy or events in aviation is because this cycle is natural to all businesses. Businesses that don't run at the edge of the safety margin don't survive because they're not profitable. So we have to design healthcare systems that run at the edge of safety, but don't cross the line. And we have to have providers and nurses and therapists to be our eyes and ears to go, we're too close to the line, and you tell us through our event reporting. It is why we have events. It's why bad things happen in all industries, because this phenomenon is just part of an economic system. What's your part in error? So we have error classified here 4 different ways, 4 different types. One is a skill-based error. So I'm going to ask everyone to close their eyes and think about the bathroom that they use when they get up in the morning. Where's your toothpaste? Where's your toothbrush? And do you run water over your toothbrush before you put on the toothpaste or after? Do you even think about it? A skill-based slip is when your hands are doing something and your mind's checked out doing something else. It happens to all of us. It happens when we're driving. It happens when we're at home. It happens when we're cooking. I don't know how many of y'all cook, enjoy cooking, but if you really follow recipes, it's really easy to make a skill-based error and use flour instead of sugar or some other error like that. And it's not because you don't know how to make the cake. It's not because you haven't made the cake 10,000 times. It's because this one time, something was a little bit out of place, something distracted you just a little bit, and you grabbed one bag instead of the other. And that's part of the human experience. Skill-based errors are by far the largest number of errors that we work, because whether you're going through a list on Epic, picking medicines, or you're doing a procedure that you've done 10,000 times, or maybe in your case 10 times and you're really good at, and your mind begins to get ahead of your hands. Because that's the way we're built to survive. Humans are built to think ahead. And if your hands are doing something that your mind says, oh, you got this, and checks out, you're at risk for a skill-based error. A rule-based error is when you're approaching something that you're not really skilled at, but you know the rules. You know the principles involved. And you're very comfortable moving forward with your decision or with your action. Sometimes our minds grab the wrong rule and we apply the wrong rule. We give the wrong med for a symptom group. Sometimes our mind grabs the right rule but applies that rule incorrectly. Rule-based errors are our number 2 leading cause of errors. And it's because really and truly, if a skill-based error is, if you make one of those 1 in 1,000 times, for a rule-based error, you're going to make 1 out of 100 times. No, when you take the rule, you know the rule, you've been trained on how to do it, you just grab the wrong rule and do it incorrectly. Last thing, knowledge-based. Knowledge-based is where you really don't know what you're doing. You really don't know the rule. And you're having to piece together common things that are maybe associated with what you're doing to come up with a plan of action. When you feel yourself in knowledge base, it's a great time to phone a friend. Because 1 in 10 times that you make a decision in knowledge base, you're going to make an incorrect decision. And 2 people working together are 100 times less likely to make that decision incorrectly. And the last thing is a violation. And everybody thinks, oh, violations are bad. The truth is, healthcare wouldn't survive if people didn't violate policy and procedure. If people went to work today across healthcare and everybody obeyed every policy and every procedure, work would slow down so badly that there would be chaos in our streets. Really good clinicians, really good nurses learn what rules they can safely violate and what rules they can't safely violate, and they learn that by doing. Is it okay? No, but it's common. So there's 2 kinds of violations. There's routine violations, things I've learned to do because I have to get my work done. And then there's crazy violations, which is who in the world would have done that, right? So there's 2 different kinds of violations. Those are our least common errors to work, but we do sometimes get involved in working violations. For the math people in the room, these numbers don't add up, and they're not supposed to. So if you try to figure out how did this math work, it doesn't. But it's a great slide because really it talks about system reliability. As a provider, you're part of a system. That system needs to support you and supports the work you do. And 50% of that system still relies on the human reliability factor, which is at best not reliable. For the human reliability parts, you can see 40% of the errors, this is from a study done by Health Professionals Improvement, HPI. They're a company that now is part of Press Ganey, but they looked at about 12,000 events that they had in their database. And these are the percentage they got from a human perspective. From a task perspective, and this is the main reason I like this slide, 30% of the events they had were communication related. 70% is everything else. But they found that in their events that they looked at, 12,000 events, 70% of those events could have been prevented if we would have had better team skills. How do you build better teams? You become highly reliable. You'll see, boy, it's a buzzword. I wish I would have invented it. I didn't. It's been called a lot of things in the 40 years that I've practiced. It's the same principle. It's doing the right thing really well all the time. You know, to take what high reliability really is, that's what it is. And a lady named Sutcliffe and some of her partners coined these 5 principles of high reliability, and they're really good. And they can help us understand some things that we can do better. I like to cover them, but they're really practice-based applicability is limited. But the first is preoccupation with failure. So in your practice, are you worried about what could go wrong? Not obsessed with what could go wrong, but do you worry about what could go wrong? Reluctance to simplify explanations. The patients in front of me, they give me a group of symptoms. Those symptoms fit this diagnosis group really well. But now there's this over here to consider, this differential diagnosis over here to consider. And understanding how you balance those within your practice is really important. Sensitivity to operations means you're aware of what's going on around you. Deference to expertise, I've talked about that a minute ago. It means you're willing to phone a friend. That you have the courage, the wisdom, and the bravery to tap out and admit, I don't know what I'm doing here. Or I'm in trouble here, and I need help here. And it's okay at SSM Health to do all 3 of those things. We would rather that happen as be talking over a corpse or a highly injured patient. And commitment to resilience is the commitment to just keep going, to work with the conditions that we have and understand that while we all look for that perfect day in healthcare, in 40 years, there hadn't been a lot for me, and there's not going to be a lot for anybody. Healthcare is messy, and healthcare can be complicated. But, you know, if you're resilient and you continue to work through the things and you take what you know today and you learn from it, you'll be better. Here are a couple of leading kind of front edge people of how they look at harm. We've talked about your part in harm, how it happens. Here's the organizational belief on harm. Human Organizational Performance Principles, also called HOP. You can Google it. There's a lot of things out there. It's really big in Australia and England and France. Hasn't caught on as much in the United States, but it is catching on. What they say is error is normal, and making mistakes is part of being human. And that's okay. They say context drives behavior. What do they mean by that? They mean simply you're going to act differently in church than you do at a St. Louis ball game. The context you're working in is going to drive your behavior. Blame fixes nothing. I don't know how many of y'all saw the video of the plane crash in India a couple of days ago. I watched that, and being safety trained, I'm always just flabbergasted at the number of people that will go on TV within 12 hours of an accident that knows nothing about the accident and start talking about pilot error. Because if we can always blame it on the pilot, or we can always blame it on the doctor, or we can always blame it on the nurse, we don't have to do any other work, do we? All blame does is stops learning. It keeps the organization from really learning from the event. How we respond to failure within the team matters. Because we need to know, going back to number one, it's going to happen. How we respond matters. And learning and improving is vital. And then Shingo principles have been around for decades. They're part of the Toyota Foundation formation. They were all coming around online about the same time. But they say you don't really get good at anything until you respect the individuals and you understand humility. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That you seek quality at the source. And y'all, sometimes that's so hard to do. But if you don't fix the source, you're just fixing a symptom of the problem. And then to create consistent purpose and consistent improvement, you have to have systems thinking, which is what I've talked about today. Let's talk about why teaming works. This slide comes from Micah Inslee. You can Google her. She is a leading situational awareness writer, leader, publisher, works with the military in both the United States and across Europe, and works with, her primary practice is the automobile industry and the military industry. But what she says is, when you get put into a situation, here's how our minds work. First, we have to perceive what's going on. Our mind perceives it. Real world situation. You have perception. You have attention on the thing. And then you begin to try to comprehend what's going on. That's where matching patterns happens. You start matching this up. When has this happened before? A good example, I've been married for a while, and I can tell you, when my wife looks at me and says certain things, my mind goes into this matching pattern. What have I done in the past, and how did I get out of this mess? And so this is how our minds work. And then we kick into the mechanisms of working memory and mental models as we begin to move from comprehension to moving this down the path from perception to comprehension to an action. And all that happens in our minds. When you walk into a patient room, when you walk into a problem, all of those things happen. Why does teaming work better? Because if you have people on your team that will help you see the things that you don't see, become aware of the things that you really can't be expected to be aware of, and you have people on your side who are talking to you, you, who are the captain of the ship, have a better chance at getting this right. If you have a team that doesn't talk to you because they're scared of you, or they're intimidated by you, or you've shown that you're not a really good communicator, suddenly you're in this by yourself, and you're a lot more likely to make a mistake. Which brings us to the authority gradient. It's there. I can promise you it's there. You may feel that it doesn't attach to you, that you don't put off that air and all those things. I can tell you, when you walk in a room as Dr. Whoever, you've established a power gradient. As a nurse who's been a nurse for 40 years, when you walk in the room and you're Dr. Whoever, you immediately get my respect for what you've done to do what you do and be where you are. And unless people take action to reduce this thing called power gradient, every voice in the room stays silent. And it matters. Those people in the room can make you better, or they can sit and watch you fail. And it really is up to you and how you manage this power gradient when you're in the room and you're in the meetings with those people that's going to determine which happens. So we're going to talk about a few skills that can help with the power gradient and help with communication. First is humility and mutual respect. I need to respect you for who you are and what you've done. You need to respect me for who I am and what I've done. I need to give you the benefit of doing your very best. And you need to give me the benefit of not coming to work just to get on your nerves. because I probably didn't. If I've called you 6 times and you're about ready to strangle me, it's probably not because I came to work wanting to get on your nerves. It's because either I got something going on, I'm not getting what I need, something's up. So mutual respect and humility is fundamental about this. And it's about modeling this. I worked with a general surgeon at a hospital in Tennessee. And the first thing he did when he would start a case, well, the first thing he did, he would pray. He was a religious man. And then after he prayed, he would look up and go, I'm probably not going to get everything in this case right. I really need your help if you see me doing something I shouldn't be doing. Was he a bad surgeon? No, he was a great surgeon. But he was a great surgeon because the team always engaged with Dr. Jernigan and always helped Dr. Jernigan be the best he could be. Psychological safety matters. Speaking up, people being able to speak up, even when they're wrong. It's important to acknowledge that they spoke up. It's important to acknowledge the importance to you as a leader of the team, how important that feedback is and how much it means to you, even if it's wrong. Do you have to explain yourself to people? No. If you have time, does that help build that relationship for next time? It certainly does. Smile and say hello. Introduce yourself. Give them the name you want to be called by. Because some people really feel strongly about being Dr. So-and-so. I had a really good friend. He's passed now. His name was Dr. Williams. And he really wanted me to call him John. And I could not find it in me to call a doctor by their first name. He was always Dr. Williams to me. When we would go play tennis, when we would go fishing, he was always Dr. Williams, and it made him crazy. But tell people what you want to be called. That's important. Demonstrate humility and explain the intent of your actions, what you're doing here, what it means, and provide and encourage opportunities for others to ask questions. Team Steps teaches a skill called CUSS. And if you hear these words, we do teach this across the system. If you hear these words, it's people escalating a concern. First, they say, I am concerned. Pretty straightforward. The second is, I am uncomfortable with this. That means I've said to you, I'm concerned, and you didn't respond. The third thing is, this is a safety issue. And the fourth letter in this that we teach that's not on this slide, because this is a Team Step slide, is stop the line. This is an important way to communicate. We teach it. I would encourage you to learn how to use it, because if the whole team shares this language, when we hear I am concerned, everybody's ears poke up. And you get more than one brain working on the problem. You get more than one set of eyes and ears working on what the situation really is and getting a better mental model shared with the team. Everything works better when we have more people involved. And this escalation can help serve to notify the people in and around the room that there is a situation. Cross-checking. Ask for help. Go and ask for help. You can see the math down here. I've already done it for you. You're a lot more accurate if you have help. You're a lot better when the team around you is functioning at its fullest potential. And I would encourage you, again, to have the wisdom and the courage to know when it's time to ask for a friend, when it's time to ask for help. Self-checking. I say 30 seconds can save a life. Really, it's a lot less than 30 seconds. I don't know how many of y'all have ever heard of the word STAR and seen it used this way. I have a special needs daughter. I've taught her STAR. She's ADD all around. She doesn't know anything, can't really calculate personal risk. And I've just taught her to, when she begins to get really excited, to stop, to think, and instead of act, I use something else, and then review. And it really helps her be in better control of herself. STAR actually came out of a school that taught special needs children. I think that's appropriate for us in healthcare because sometimes we behave like children. And so STAR can help us. If we're fixing to do something really critical, stop, think, act, and then review your action to make sure it went as it was supposed to. Because a lot of times we'll act and it won't go like we want it to. And it causes us to start this cycle again. But this skill is your best weapon against skill-based errors. Because what this skill does is it re-engages your brain with what your hands are doing. And if you feel your brain is getting out in front of your hands and you're operating on autopilot, it's a great chance to stop, think, then act, and review. This goes right back into making sure, again, another slide from Micah Inslee. Y'all can tell I kind of like her work. This goes right back into moving from perception to comprehension to projection or action and how that does in our mind. And by stopping and thinking, we're a lot more accurate in this process. And that's the content I have today. I appreciate your attention, and I wish y'all the very best. I do. I hope some of these skills that I've talked about, you think about them. Yeah, they're common sense. They really are. But honestly, in the heat of a moment, they can be really altering to your career if you get good at them, because so many people aren't. Whether it's a provider, a doctor, a lawyer, a preacher, doesn't matter. These are human behaviors that make humans better together, and better teams do better care. Thank you.